And that's why you buy toilet paper a week in advance.
Somewhere down the line, I mean, I'm stealing straight from George Carlin, but somewhere down the line in my lifetime, when did toilet paper become bathroom tissue? I don't understand it.
We
People don't
don't
say
use that
toilet
word.
paper anymore. Huh?
We don't use well. Bathroom tissue sounds more elegant.
Really?
Well, you could go butt scraper, and that would take
Yeah,
you
yeah,
to the
yeah,
other
yeah.
direction.
Yeah, but then your family guy, no, that was butt scratcher. I'm sorry. Butt scratcher? Yeah. Okay. I just wondered, man. And could somebody please tell me what is the sense of scented toilet paper? That's the only thing in the world you don't have to make smell good because it's going to get messed up. But, well, no, we'll get off of that. So, so how's life in Florida? I understand the East Coast is getting kind of beat up with storms and everything. You guys have been doing all right?
We had a little bit of rain, and it's been muggy,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know. I guess due to the effects of climate variance,
Mm-hmm.
um, the tides have, no pun intended, have shifted and have created a little moment in time for us for a few months at least of less harsh. Let's not speak too quickly.
Yes, let's not jinx ourselves. But I blame Steve for this. Harneal Media, Steve, I blame you for this. Uh, where are you at? There you are. I blame Steve for this. He got me hooked on a weather guy on YouTube. Ryan Hall Yaal is what his YouTube channel is, and he puts out edited videos where he talks about upcoming weather patterns and this, that, and the other. But he's known for doing marathon live streams when there are severe weather outbreaks and what have you. And a couple of weeks ago, well, a few weeks back now, he was talking about we've got a super El Nino forming off the West Coast here. And what that tends to do, not always, but almost always, what that tends to do is make for a easier hurricane season for the Atlantic because hurricanes don't like wind shear. And the El Nino forces the jet stream to come down to the south a little bit more and creates wind shear over the Gulf of Mexico. So and further out to sea. So you guys end up with a more gentle, not so dramatic of a hurricane season. We'll see if that comes to pass. But we, as a result of this El Nino, which is simply a warm current coming in from the southwest, so water temperatures are higher on the Pacific coast. We have been having a milder summer because of that. Before, well, the last 2, 3 days notwithstanding, we had 2, maybe 3 days of 100+ degrees here in Southern Oregon back in June, and then nothing in July. And then day before yesterday, it was 106. Yesterday, we topped out at 111. And I don't know what we've topped out at today. It right now we're sitting at load up. We're at 106 right now, and that's supposed to carry on until Thursday. Thursday we're supposed to be, well, we'll be down to 101 on Thursday, and then we get down into the 90s for the week. But 111 degrees, I ain't going out there. To hell with that. I ain't going out in that. 106, I ain't going out in that. I'm in the house. Forget it.
I do have a couple of comments concerning weather patterns and so on and so on. There's great concern.
Mm-hmm.
Hear me out though. There's
Okay.
great concern, and I do agree that it's very useful
Mm-hmm.
to toss paint on famous paintings across the world in order to bring awareness. So I think that that's a fun. It's just an incredible thing. However, I think that even better would be, and maybe I'm wrong here, but I'm just little the little the little peanuts are going clink clink clink
Mhm.
in my cerebellum. Um,
Okay.
I think that what if politicians with great financial attributes, uh,
Mhm.
funding, they're living pretty well. What if they, instead of going to their local administrations in order to debate and delegate, instead of the cars and automobiles, how about like wagons or biking, in order to show
Mhm.
the populace at large how
Mhm.
it's done, instead of flying, well, they could take a rowboat across the Potomac, or and I'm thinking, and instead of purchasing all these which are documented, they could, since we're going to lose half of the coastal areas, how about not buying these multi-million dollar lavish places, because they're going to go under? It's a bad investment, and yet they're doing it. I don't know. So all I'm saying is that those are some points that they might.
Yeah.
But the rest of us, oh, we're the ones that have. Oh, I see. No, I don't think
Well,
so.
let's think about that. I mean, they want to go on these fact-finding junkets and stuff like that. Better idea, because what you're doing is basically you're having a meeting. What better place to have a meeting than the floor of the Senate or the House of Representatives? You've got a nice auditorium there. You've got plenty of seats. You have a stage. You have a sound system. There's lights, the facilities. Everything is right there. You don't need to go nowhere to have a meeting. You can just stay right there. If you really do want to change a scenery, there are hundreds of local hotels that would be willing to lease you out conference room space. So
But
you can
why do that?
contribute to the local economy and keep things local.
No, but I want less resources. So why don't they hold it at the local parks, which are already paid for
Or
by and instead of like lighting implements and such, there's nothing like there's so many things that they could do to
yes,
show, and
yes,
yet
go to your local Walmart and get an Easy Up and put it out there in the park and have your meetings. You can get a circle of Easy Ups around there. I mean, they're 10 foot by 10 foot. You could set up enough of them to put everything there.
yeah,
So, I mean, you want to make a contribution, make a serious contribution. Don't just plant a tree and say, there, I've done my part.
yeah,
Don't just retweet something and say, there, I've done my part. Make a serious commitment,
yeah.
you know?
I mean, it's only reason. I mean, I guess, well, reasonable in this. However, I will say, an interesting aside that's close to this, or at least a concept, is that I saw this guy talking about, um, like one of those clips, and he said, uh, the reason people don't lose weight is because of X, Y, and Z. And like he's saying all these things, and he says, but if you take this and this product and this combination, this and that, it heals the natural process for people because of this, that. And all the while he's saying that, he's this big.
Yeah.
So,
With a bowl of Doritos in front of him.
lead by example.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. That's like me trying to tell somebody how to be a millionaire.
Right.
If it was easy to be a millionaire, everybody would be one.
Yeah. So that's the thing. So in terms of all that, so I've been seeing these things, and people of notoriety,
Mhm.
um I'm aware of the hypocrisy,
Oh, yeah.
and I think that everybody is,
You
or
know,
to a good, because if the people, the pretty people,
mhm.
and I'm not saying, I am saying it kind of like slightly tongue in cheek or slightly abrasive, like, but the pretty people means these people that have all this plenty, which is fine,
Yeah.
but don't go preaching. Don't go chasing waterfall. No, don't go preaching to the populace at large that's doing the day by day, trying to, while you're in this vast freaking complex on the peering over the side of the Atlantic, where supposedly if we don't all cut our standards of living, regular
Right.
people's standard, then everything, why are they even there on the coast, you know? And so, and why are they flying these jets, and why are they doing that? Why don't they just telecommute? You know, it just
I've got a better idea. Why don't you just shut up? You know, you're paid to be an actor. I don't want to hear what you think about anything political. You're an actor. Shut up and act.
hi.
You're supposed to be a singer or a guitarist or a drummer or whatever. Shut up and do what you're supposed to do. I don't care what you think about anything political.
Hi, you know me from 15 different movies. I've
Mhm,
starred since 19 da da da.
mhm.
And I'm here to tell you there's a big concern and this and that. And meanwhile,
Yeah,
they're living in this thing with they're
yeah.
just burning freaking.
A
So
28,000 square foot house, you know, with a 5-digit electric bill, and you're telling
a
me I got
jet,
to switch to LEDs and I can't have a gas stove? Bite me, and I'll show you where.
a runway in the backyard.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
it's like give me a freaking break.
I have
And,
no
well,
time for those people.
yeah, but
I have no time for them.
so the thing is that it's a double-edged sword,
Mm-hmm.
this internet thing, because information is wild and you know, uncontrolled to a
Mm-hmm.
degree, but we see narratives by what the establishment is supposed to be propagating ideas in order to sort of like infuse every aspect. I remember Biden saying um, the most during the lockdowns, saying um, for Floridians, the best thing you could, and it was during hurricane season. He
Mm-hmm.
says the best thing you could do for hurricane season is take the. he managed, and here's the thing. Here's the thing. Here's the thing. They do that with
Mm-hmm.
everything in
Yeah.
little ways. So if they want, it appears, if they want some outcome, it doesn't matter how they connect it to anything that's going on, they'll
Yes.
connect it. Even if it makes no sense, because there's enough people out there. This goes to Greg's Nigerian prince thing, which I think is one of the most brilliant. It's one of his one and few, if at all, brilliant explanations in the history of us all getting together. Um, they'll connect it. I'm sure there's plenty of people out there, maybe not all,
That'll
but will
make
say
that connection.
that they'll say, yeah, that makes total sense when it doesn't.
No.
You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
yeah.
So if you want to protect yourself this hurricane season, you have to get a green parrot. You have to get a green parrot, and you have to put them on a bamboo perch. And it's important that it's bamboo, because that's not only sustainable, it's also renewable.
Yeah.
So it's got to be a bamboo perch, and get a green parrot. And if you said that, a certain percentage of people would believe it. Then that's why, and I saw this somewhere. I don't even remember what meme I saw this on, but if I live to be a nice old age and people ask me, well, what's your secret? How did you live so long? I'm just going to make something up, like I ate a pine cone every week or just whatever. So I'm going to make something up just to see who's going to believe it.
It'll become as the years go by, and let's say you wrote it in some sort of manuscript and it
Mhm.
got lost and it got rediscovered.
Yeah.
The fact that it got lost and then rediscovered, like let's say 200 years from now, and then cracked open, and then archaeologists all surrounding it, and they look at it, and just the story of it, and you just wrote a simple little thing because you were bullcrapping, it will become some sort of like pseudo
Yeah.
religion.
Yeah.
Like people, and you'll have T-shirts with your sayings on it in the
Yeah.
future, and hats, and like water bottles.
Pine cones forever. You know.
The Great Pinecone Church will have,
Yeah.
and with the doors like the little, and then
I
I'm
don't
telling
know
you,
anymore. We're gullible as heck, but we think we're getting smarter.
Yeah.
But a certain percentage, and it's like the Nigerian prince thing that we were talking about. They send out millions of emails knowing they're not going to get millions of responses. They don't need millions of responses. They need one or two.
Yeah.
Because if they can get one or two per
To
month,
dish out the money, yeah.
then they're fine. Yeah, that's enough. So if you put out that, grinding up a pine cone and putting, a certain amount of it and compressing it into a pill, and you take 2 of those a day, if you convince 50 people to give you $20 for a bottle of pine cone powder pills, and you
You've done
get
it.
50 people, yeah, you get 50 people a month, but that's not your only rice bowl, because this week it's pine cones.
Yeah.
Next week it's going to be dandelion petals.
Yeah.
So you've got different rice bowls going, and you got a different clientele for each one. Heck, if I can convince enough people that dandelion petals, if they drink my dandelion juice, it'll cure toenail fungus, I will guarantee you there will be memes about it next month. If I can convince enough people to give it a try, just give it a try.
Jim Dockrell said one of the first things you learn in science is that correlation does not equal causation.
Well, that's one of the first things that they teach in science. Yes, you're absolutely right. But not everybody who's taught learns.
So let's talk about that for half a second. So you brought up, so I never used that sentence, but the idea or that phrase,
correlation does not imply causation. Yeah.
I never used that sentence, but I think that the concept is an obvious one. It doesn't require,
It should be.
at least for me, and I'm not saying anything special one way or the other. I'm just saying, for me, there's always something more behind something, as you've seen in our discussions. So by default, I don't stop at 1+1, although 1+1, but you get the point. Like two different things that kind of fit somehow, and that's the end of the discussion.
Right.
That doesn't happen in my that. At best, let me just say this one thing. At best, and we're talking a broad thing. At best, 2 items that appear to have a connection,
right,
for me, at best, to that point, I have that concept. So, at the point that I arrive at seeing some sort of connection going on, that's not the end of the story, because it never is. But I can work with that for the moment.
Well, because it's human nature, we are programmed to see patterns.
Yeah.
We see patterns. So if we say 2 things, like Jim's got a very good example here. Like when it rains when you wash your car. Washing your car doesn't make it rain. But when we see that pattern over and over again, somebody could make that leap and say, no, I can't wash my car. It'll rain. You may think that sounds funky, but if you've ever been around people who follow organized sports, you'll see that kind of superstition all over the place. Well, I'm wearing my lucky hat. Well, no, I have to stand up during the 3rd quarter, because the last 3 times in a row I've stood up during the 3rd quarter, my team has won. So, we think we actually have some sort of a cosmic effect on this football game that's happening millions of miles or thousands of miles away.
But let's stop for a second. With that you're saying and Jim's saying. Let's look at it like this. See what you say, what you think, and say. When you just said that, following what Jim wrote, a phrase popped in my mind, and that phrase is, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Every time you go outside, it rains. Every time you go outside to wash your car, it rains. Or every time the game gets started, for some reason they lose, or so. Even though the person perceives that every time, and they make the connection that every time they go out, it rains, or that every time they play the game in such a way, this and that, they lose or whatever. Even though they see that connection, and therefore the quickest route from A to B is that connection,
Mm-hmm.
there's still something to it that may have more steps in between from A to B that answer the question better in terms of, let's say with the car, maybe the guy wakes up at a certain hour, and during that season in their hometown, the weather patterns are such, and he's just meeting the car washing moment with the moment when rains usually go over the air. And so there's all these steps that
Right. And that's what I was getting at. And that was my whole point in talking about those two things is we see a pattern, a perceived pattern, because it's wired into us.
Yeah.
We see patterns. And so we make that leap that somehow we are creating the situation.
But
And
that's
that gets back to correlation does not imply causation.
but that's the right. But that's the point that I'm trying to go ahead.
Well,
Go ahead.
but further than that, we also have confirmation bias in that we tend to forget all the times that it didn't rain when you washed your car. We forget
Let me
all the times that our lucky hat, we didn't have our lucky hat and our team won.
I don't want to miss the opportunity of saying that
Okay.
that I guess one point within that, with what I'm saying is that those lost steps, which is kind of what you're reiterating.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is that this doesn't work all the time, and in fact, it
Right.
probably works a few of the times. But the ultimate outcome of the person perceiving the quick route from A to B of I stepped outside to wash my car, and it rains every time. That understanding, which is lacking all the other steps in between that would funnel
Yes.
into that, although important, at the end of the day, the simple shorthand shorthand explanation without further knowledge, he in fact is perceiving this, is accurate. What's inaccurate, or not delved into, is sitting back and saying, what are all the variables or different things as to why like expanding on why. And so a lot of people could just say, end up like what you're saying, like holding some sort of ritualistic talisman type idea, or if I hold this bead in my hand or whatever.
Yeah. And it's also, again, it's selective memory. You will remember and you will notice and you will curse the day that you just go to the grocery store and come home and you hit every single light red. You will remember that. That stands out. That's an anomaly. Will you remember the day you went to that same store, came home the same way, and you hit every light green, or half of them red and half of them green, or there was some sort of a mixture in there? But we will remember hitting every single light red because that's it's just something in there. Well, number one, it maybe it angers us, maybe it irritates us, or what have you, and we remember things like that. But we don't remember all the times that we went and we hit every single light green.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a thing with a recurring number I see when I look at a digital clock. I see 1234. And it's almost like I'm walking through the house and we've got a digital clock on the stove. I walk past, I look into the kitchen and I see 1, 2, 3, 4. And I notice it. And it just registers in my brain. And I see it a lot. But it's just as likely I've seen 457 or 413 or 1003. I just don't notice it because it's not a pattern. It's not something recognizable. It's not 1, 2, 3, 4. I've never seen 3, 4, 5, 6. That doesn't stand out in my brain. 3, 4, 5 or 4, 5, 6 or anything like that. That doesn't stand out, but 1, 2, 3, 4 does. And I'll kind of elbow Linda or say, "Yep, look, 12:34."
Okay, so just and to expand on that, at least the things that popped into my mind when you were saying that, I believe that this is fairly accurate, what I'm about to say. As human beings, we are stuck in a strange situation.
Mhm.
We have the ability to talk,
Mhm.
to listen, to see, our senses, to feel, smell, all these things, and we think, but and we're taking in information from the world around us, and some things are constant, or some things we revisit on a constant basis and become familiar to us, and obviously we attach memories, history, significance to things, and in a sliding scale.
Mhm.
So we're interacting with the world, but what we're incapable of doing. So I'll say this: we know, I would hope, and the reason I would hope is because I think that it's true, but maybe so that there's more as we go about our existence than we're able to put in front of us at any given moment, a bigger picture.
Yeah,
So we're dealing with things at a time, or a combination of things, but at one point, to whatever degree, there's too much
yeah,
that's out there that's true or
yeah, and,
false.
or that we
I'm,
just right outside of our field of vision that we don't notice.
all that, yeah,
Mhm.
from that to, so we're incapable. We have to be reductive in order, and we've touched on this before, but once we are reductive with something, it could be a concept, it could be whatever it is. Once we're reductive, in order to hold that something, that
Mhm.
idea, that word, that sentence, that situation, once we reduce it so that we can actually put it in our pocket and go down the road, go down the street with it, like, oh, okay, so this is this. Once we've done that, it's at the exclusion of other things that may contribute to a better understanding of it
Right.
from our side. Some people, and I'll wrap it up with this, and that's our problem. It's kind of like a dream state type deal, but so, and that's our problem in some instances. That little pocket of information, or a word, or a concept, or some sort of situation like coincidence, once we've pocketed it like that, for some people, I don't know this. This is sort of like, but I'm assuming because I do this in some cases
Well,
in
it's
order to just.
anecdotal. We observe it. Yeah.
Some people take that idea and they just leave it. Well, that's it.
Mhm.
Um, and other people maybe won't do that. They'll say, well, that's an idea, but to be continued. And so, since we're last thing I'll say, since we're all doing that constantly, hence you have never arriving at some sort of, for the most part it's always chaotic in terms of ideas, concepts, this and
Well,
that.
but it's chaotic because we make it so. Now, Jim's point as to one of the first things that they teach you is correlation does not imply causation. And I came up with a flip reply, but was serious in that that's what they teach, but not everybody learns. I mean, I was taught a multitude of things in school. Some of it was true, some of it later turned out to be false, but I don't remember it all. I didn't learn it all. I didn't retain it all. There's no way. I mean, I have forgotten more than I ever learned, I think. But the point is, to your point, too many people, just my opinion, too many people take point A, point B, wrap it up as you said, put it in their pocket, and that's good enough. That's it. They don't have the curiosity to delve deeper. They don't have the interest. They don't have a need or a desire, or maybe they've got something else going on or whatever. There's a pine cone a day and you'll live to be 104. Oh, okay, I'll remember that. And they put it in their pocket and they walk away and never question it. We see the result of that in the course of our day. All over, be it on social media, be it in pop culture, what have you. I mean, I was taught years ago, and we've talked about this before, that the buffalo, the American bison, was extinct. Well, it wasn't extinct. It was driven close to extinction, but it was never extinct. I learned that for another 20 years after the fact.
Yeah, they
So
taught us that they were extinct,
mhm,
and that's hogwash.
yeah. Well, and that wasn't the only thing that I was taught that turned out to be just false. But that's just a real quick example that I can remember right off the top of my head. Now, there was no malice on the teacher's part. He was teaching what was in the book, you know.
But
So,
there is such a thing as malice.
well, I'm not saying that, but it's not like it's not like my social studies teacher in 7th grade said, I'm going to fill these guys full of crap. He was
No,
teaching out of the same textbooks that we were reading.
no, right. But my point is
So,
that you conjured the word malice, and
yeah,
therefore,
no, yeah, but I put it directly in context with him. I don't think
no, I
it
know
was
that. I
malice
know,
on his
no,
part.
no, no. I know that. I know that.
But
That's not what I'm
but
saying
yeah, I
that
do know that the concept of malice
no,
does
dude.
exist, and yeah,
No, let me say. You conjured the word malice.
yeah,
Okay. So therefore there's a significance for that word in itself.
right.
Obviously you didn't attribute it to your teacher.
No,
You said, well, this is what they learn. I understand. But that word that you conjured, that you brought forward, that has meanings attached to it, out there in the world, unlike the teacher that's just, following the course of what he's learned, and he's passing it on, there's people out there
oh, I know that.
that are on about this other side of the coin, that we, with ill intent towards
Hmm.
for whatever purpose that they have.
Hmm.
So we also have to contend with that type of situation
Right.
in our daily influx.
Well, that's where eventually I was going to go with all of this. It's up to us to explore further and make a decision on our own.
Yeah.
And that's why I continually preach to my grandkids and I preach to my kids. And I still do on occasion, not very often, but on occasion, never accept one source of any kind of information. Always check yourself. Think for yourself. Don't just be spoon fed. Think for yourself. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to question every single thing that somebody says, but you should consider the source of the information. And if something doesn't sound right or something doesn't make sense, explore it. The only thing you're ever going to be out, the only thing you're ever going to lose is the time it took you to explore. And sometimes it's just as simple as looking up the definition of a word in the dictionary. If you're not really sure what it means, don't just accept a sentence if you don't know what a couple, 3 words mean. Find out what they mean, because that could save you a lot of grief later on down the road. Be curious, but think for yourself, come to your own conclusions, but be careful with those conclusions and be willing to accept the fact that you may be incorrect, you may be wrong.
There's or kind of an example. I'll just in what you're saying, or at least in the ballpark of it. Why is it? Well, I mean, I kind of know, so it's a self, but I'll just say, why is it, or how is it, or something to that effect, with all the available information online, true or false, somewhere in between, just generally speaking, with the vast amount of information that's available online, I could say also in your public library, with the vast
Mhm.
amount of information in the world, period. And yet, like for instance, in terms of, oh, I don't know, grammar, punctuation, and such, why is it that all available information out there exists so that you as a person, me as a person, would never have to? ever again commit, in a general sense, any grammatical errors, spelling or otherwise, in anything I ever contribute in a conversation. And yet, with all that available goodness out there, I commit errors. You know what I'm saying? And you can remove grammar and I don't know, put geography in place and stuff. We always end up quite short of, this. What do you have to say about
I can only give an opinion, and that opinion is that people don't care. Is that people don't care. You can easily understand the concept of here and there.
And there.
Now write it down. Here, Here, and there. The only difference is the letter T.
Mm-hmm.
Here, Here, there, There. That's it.
Your and you are.
Exactly. When I see somebody typed out in a post, we went to our house, Arehouse. It makes no sense. It makes zero sense when you read it. But they don't care. And if you correct them on it so that we can communicate, you're the bad guy. We have BS'd 2 generations into believing that stuff doesn't matter. I know how to use the apostrophe. I was taught how to use the apostrophe. I know how to use the Oxford comma. I know how to use the possessive plural apostrophe. And now I'm seeing it doesn't matter. Nobody cares. So I want the time that it took me to learn that back. But I'm not going to get it. So,
And if it's not and if nobody uses it, you're the odd one out. You know what I'm saying? Like,
but I'm fine with that. It's kind of like when it cracks me up every time when I see somebody write, like, for instance, 98 degrees, and they type 98, and then they'll put in the asterisk above the number 8 on the keyboard. But then when I write out 98 degrees, I type in 98, and then I do the Unicode to put the little degree, and I'll put it in the chat right now.
I don't do it.
It's 98.
That requires the knowledge of the keyboard. That takes only one moment to find it out, but then you have to memorize it. But compounding, that's the correct way.
And it freaks people out when I write something out with the little US cents symbol, because dollars is right there above number 4, but where the heck is cents? Well, you just got to know the Unicode.
So using that as an example, in line with what we've been saying, if we multiply that by all the different things that we could do better with, if better was something that we strive for, but better is a variable from person to person. So that's why I said chaotic.
Yeah.
Because the way I see the world and the connections that I make in terms of one thing to the other, and the complexity of what it may or may not be, or however I see it, could be similar to how you see it in certain aspects, or could be completely turned over, head over heels in terms of the outcome or how you get to that concept. But if you multiply that by billions of people or whatever, it's sort of chaotic. It's
very chaotic.
Yeah. So we have a situation where, I guess it's I know we've talked about this, but it's kind of surprising that stuff even works.
That is a surprise. I mean, I'm continually, and I've said it before, and I'll continue to say it again, I'm constantly surprised that there's almost 8 billion people on Earth. I'm constantly surprised we don't break out into 4 billion individual fist fights on a daily basis, because we have allowed our emotions to run unchecked, and everybody has an opinion, and everybody believes that their opinion is the most important thing, and we have to share it with one another. And for every opinion somebody has, everybody else probably has a different, slightly opinion. Some may be dramatically different, some may be just slightly different.
Mm-hmm.
But we won't take that into account and say, oh, you have a different opinion? Okay, fine. Want to go get a sandwich? Let's go get a sandwich. You know,
Well, most people do, actually.
face to face, yes. Face to face.
Face to face.
Completely different subject, because you will type things you wouldn't dare say to somebody face to face.
Yeah, because there's a threat of actual instant face to face contact, right?
Well, but see, that's one of those things about, and this is, I'm generalizing now, okay? That's one of the differences. That's one of the things about men in particular. Men can be friends, but there is always going to be a level of competition between men, always. And there's always going to be a threat of violence somewhere. Now, you can be best friends with somebody for your entire life, but you both know, it's instinctual. You both know that if you cross the line far enough, you're probably going to get punched in the nose. So there is that implication, but we all know it and we understand it, you know. And if you get a new car, you know of a buddy who's going to want to go out and get a new car too, and his is going to be either a little bit shinier or maybe a little bit have something that yours doesn't have. We always have that level of competition, you know.
I'm not. I mean, there's something like that, but I'm generally weird that way. Yes, the ultimate eventual. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, we may not perceive ourselves like that, but we have friends. We know people who are. If you went down and got a brand new guitar when you were still with your band, somebody else would want to go get a new guitar as well.
Yeah.
Maybe not to be better than you, but to at least keep up.
Oh yeah. But talking about the so as a general vibe,
mm-hmm.
yeah, and on that level, yeah, but it's contagious too.
Mm-hmm.
That's how come.
Very.
You know, we have a lot of stuff that, you know, like microphones, USB microphones. That's what people use. But you might see a buddy purchase one, and you're like, oh yeah, I need that, and stuff like
sure.
that. But that's involved with men and women, I would assume, generally speaking. Yeah. But the aspect of threat of ultimate threat of violence if things go over the edge, that I think is true, because that's the only way to establish at the end of that line. Obviously we've adapted so that's not, unless you're quite savage, because there's people that'll go from 0 to 10 in half a second. But the ultimate, when things cannot be resolved, the ultimate solution, there's a saying, is people go to violence. If there's an impasse and people end up going, I mean, you could walk away, but in certain situations, it ends up being that. Yeah.
Well, yeah. And some people have a shorter fuse than others. Some people have an amazingly long fuse. I mean, my stepson, I don't think you could ruffle his feathers if you hit him with a brick. The guy is just so ding dong laid back. I don't think I've ever seen him mad. I've seen him perturbed. I've seen him a little bit disturbed, or maybe frustrated with himself. But I don't think I've ever seen the guy upset, let alone mad. He's one of the calmest, most laid back people I know. And so much so, it's remarkable. It's memorable. It's one of those things, damn, he really stands out, that kind of thing. Jim Dockrell says, I wish someone would want to prove they can paint the outside of my house better than I can. Didn't you ever read Tom Sawyer, Huckleberry Finn? He had to go out and whitewash. He had to go out and paint a fence, and he was doing it in such a way that he had a bunch of his friends, and he was sitting there talking about how great he was at painting and how nobody could do it as good as him, and that it was just 1 in 3 guys can get it just right. And pretty soon all of his friends are going, no, let me try. Next thing you know, he's got a group of friends. Every damn one of them had a paintbrush, and they painted the fence, and he stood back and watched. There you go, Jim.
That's hilarious.
Let's see. Jamie had something here. Most of my family are like that. We bought a new greenhouse. Well, they got one too that has 2 opening windows and a bigger door. Well, yeah. Okay, Jim says, yeah, he's read it, and so does everyone else he knows, and they won't fall for it. Yeah, they'd be like, yeah, you're the king. You're the king. You do it the best. Yep, you're the best, all right. You missed a spot, but you're the best.
That's funny. But I think that today, going back to that idea of there's enough available information
Yeah.
that there's no almost to agree. I mean, there's sufficient information out there that if somebody wanted to be knowledgeable over one thing or another, it's not unavailable to them.
Mm-hmm. But you hit the nail on the head.
And yet there's not enough time in the world to do such things. And then there's that you said, the lack of curiosity as an example.
You hit the nail on the head when you said the magic word, wanted to.
Right.
I don't think it's ever been about a lack of information. I think the information's always been there.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't want that information, nobody's going to force it into you.
Yeah.
With me, I didn't get into studying English because I thought it was going to improve my chances of getting a date. I didn't want to look like an idiot when I wrote something. So I figured the easiest way to not look like an idiot is know how to construct a sentence, know how to create a paragraph, and be able to convey a thought. That's why I studied English. Then I discovered that I kind of liked it. And certain parts of it were interesting to me. So I've kind of kept a pedestrian interest in, learning goofy things like the origins of phrases and the origins of some words and stuff like that. But it all came from not wanting to look uneducated when I wrote something.
I've been corrected before in the past with
I have too.
With certain words that I've used that it just was a habit.
Mm-hmm.
And I've mentioned this before, but it wasn't until I started doing the genealogy, really. I mean, that's not true 100% because prior, but it was more to do with, I've recently divided my eras, as opposed to skinny Elvis and fat Elvis, between the music age and the genealogy age.
Mm-hmm.
The music age was more to do, even though you do use the English language in order to create songs like the lyrics.
Sure.
But there's an aspect of, well, first of all, it's kind of shorthand because you're using things that rhyme and impressions. It's more in the poetic, artistic side, not logistic, let's say, or not trying to convey a strict idea. It's more to do with patterns of splish splash colors that give the listener a sense of what you want to convey, but they can imagine something. So this world of music has a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
And this genealogy thing, what happened is that, especially using the program that I used, the Ancestry thing, it has little boxes where things belong.
Mm-hmm.
And if you multiply that with the many people that you're adding to it, what ends up happening is that you're collating. But the act of collating things in its proper category, and then all those exercises you repeat, it's a lesson on its own that shifted my mind to saying, um, as opposed to this mystical song, open ended, it can be interpreted however the hell you want. I started to say, well, I got to write this little story about this ancestor,
Mhm.
and I need to convey it properly as best I can, and that requires a different type of
You had to activate a different part of your brain. Yeah.
right. Repeating that for the past 4 or 5 years, it's been about 4.5 years now. To the extreme that because I'm kind
Yeah.
of like that. I'm kind of like, I'll take something and I'll wring that towel until it's wrung with no more water. Um, it opened up doors that I had not previously really taken in consideration. It's a different discipline. Anyways, long story short, it's improved at least in my opinion, my writing ability, my ability to convey something so that it's not abstract, but
Mhm.
more solid. It's allowed me to also learn history in a very interesting manner, and geography in
Mhm.
places that I wouldn't have focused on. Um,
Yeah.
so the benefits of it for me, for my purposes, has been astronomical.
I have a question.
Yeah,
Do you find that since you've taken on this journey, you said since what, about 2018,
yeah.
have you found that are you, do you think you're more analytical now when it comes to when information comes in? Do you think you're more analytical than you
What
used
happened?
to be?
I think I'm before I was more mystic, sort of like the musician artist. I think that this is honed in that ability where before I used it to create palettes of colors, and I used it logistically with music writing,
Right. Hmm.
playing in terms of the structure of, but I used it without this. I guess you get the point.
Yeah.
Music, you can use the same sort of like
Well,
techniques,
sure.
but
Music is math, and that's all there is to it. But yes.
but there's no, but you're not necessarily working on such rigidity with
Right.
English. You're not necessarily looking at
Yes.
history, and
Hmm.
you're not cold. Things are more like impressions, like splashes of color,
Yeah.
and so you're more in that, and that's why you see all
You're
these hippies and stuff. They're like, yeah, I saw colors when I wrote this song. They're not honed in like a literary type of guy.
right. You're
They're
leaving
more,
things open to interpretation unless you're telling a specific story about a coal mining accident in Cornwall or something. You
and
know.
even still, it's a snippet, snapshot, photograph moment
Yeah.
that doesn't require expanding
Right.
beyond a small
Hmm.
little. So there is a variation that occurred there
Hmm.
just by sticking to certain rules,
Hmm.
which I've bent to my purposes. Like I use ancestry
Well,
the way I want to use it,
sure.
in certain instances. But that's neither here nor there. Those are little tweaks that one makes in order to get their thing done. But yes, it has helped me anchor my mind in a direction where things were a little bit, there was no purpose for me to necessarily lay out a search for why a certain group of people ended up in another place,
Yeah.
unless I would have had people that lived in the one place
Yeah.
that ended up in the other, and now I'm doing this, and by default I'm also finding, oh well, there's books on how that happened, and
Hmm.
then and all these, and just keep adding to that. And it's open. I've learned a lot. Basically, I've learned how not naive but ignorant. I wouldn't have known either way, unless I would have taken this on, how ignorant I've been of certain things. And if I'm ignorant of these certain things, or have been in the past,
Uh-huh.
imagine all the things that I don't know now that I'm ignorant of. And so it's created that situation for me. And so it's created some sense of humility, although I've always had is, but in terms of, what one thinks,
Yeah.
that they know, it's given me a little bit of humility.
Well,
It's a big, yeah, it's been a big thing.
but you have noticed the change in yourself. You've noticed that you're more focused and that you're more analytical.
No, I've always thought the way I do, but I've never applied it the
Okay,
way
so it gave you a place to focus.
it gave me a place to focus.
Okay, all right, gotcha. Okay, I
Yeah,
was just curious. I was just curious.
yeah. No, that's the best way. It gave me a place to focus,
Mhm.
and
Well,
it's rewarding. It really is. I mean,
this kind of dovetails in with one of the things that we were talking about in the green room that I said I had kind of um, hiding in the background here that we could use. And that was I sent you a link to a video that you never got a chance to watch. And I sent it to Linda too. This was one of those things that it it ended up in my suggested. How I don't know. It's only about a 3-minute video, but it was such a diversion and such a cool thing. It basically kind of just cleansed the mind, kind of like a drink of water will cleanse the palate, but between spoonfuls of whatever meal you're eating,
mhm.
it cleansed the mind and it got me out of a bunch of other things that I'd been thinking about. And it was just like, man, that's cool. And the link in this is focus. That we focus on things, and I've talked about this before, we tend to focus on things so much we kind of ignore what's going on around us. And this video was called A New View of the Moon.
Okay.
And it's about 5 years old. It was posted about 5 years ago on a channel called To Scale. Now, they had a video that went viral about 7 years ago where they went out in the Black Rock Desert in Nevada and they set up the solar system to scale using models of the sun and then Mercury and then just going on out through all the planets. And each model was scaled down size of the actual planet and our moon and the various other moons, and set a distance away from the sun to kind of give you an idea of how big the solar system actually is. And this, I guess, art installation, you would call it, was humongous. That video's got over 12 million views now. It went viral for a while. Well, this video was on the same channel, and it was a guy in Los Angeles, or in the Los Angeles area. He had a nice sized telescope on wheels, and he just took it out one day onto the sidewalk and he pointed it at the moon and was looking at the moon, and people came and watched what he was doing. What are you doing? Well, I'm looking at the moon. You want to check it out? And he did it in a compilation. People had about 6 different things to say. The number one was, oh my God, the moon is something we see every night just about. But how many sit and actually look at it? How many people take notice of it, of what it actually looks like? And it was, I mean, pretty soon he had people lining up to come just look at the moon through his telescope. And it was just a cool, neat video of all these people going, oh my God, you can see the craters. Oh, look, you can see this and you can see that. That is wild. But people had never slowed down and just stopped to take a look at the moon until he gave them the opportunity to see it from a different angle. Then they got excited. Then they got fascinated. Then they had questions about the telescope. Where can I get one of these? Are you going to be out here tomorrow? Because I got somebody else I'd love to bring over and show this. And that was just kind of a cool idea to me, of getting people to kind of take a step back and take a couple of seconds and really look at something that you see every day from a different, slightly different point of view. And what I'll do is I'll go ahead and I'll put it over on our Trample Underfoot podcast Facebook page and let you check it out. Like, again, it is
Link it to me in private too.
It is 3 minutes and 18 seconds. But what I liked most was watching the expression on adults, just regular adults of every age group, and even some kids, but people from their teens up into their 60s and 70s who had never really paid attention to it, and it's there all the time.
You know what I'm thinking? I'm thinking, why go outside when you can sit in the comfort of your air conditioned and watch it on the internet?
Yeah. Well, one guy said said something similar. He said, "Well, so this is a picture?" He says, "No, this is the moon." He points up. It's it right there. You're looking at that moon right there. And he goes, "I am." Wait a minute. He sticks his face back down, hit it again, and he's looking at it. He goes, "Oh man, that's wild. I had no idea."
But who are these people that don't know what a telescope is?
Well, they've never seen one like that. It didn't
Yeah.
look. It doesn't. It's. I want to say it's a Dobsonian telescope. You look through the eyepiece, and it has a mirror that goes down to a bigger mirror, and then the lens is like a foot in diameter, something like that. It doesn't look like the sitting on a tripod 6 foot long jobby.
Well, let me just say this: 2 things. So they had never experienced that, and so I get that, but I just 2 things that come to mind. One, the other day somebody posted on Facebook a picture of a guy from the 60s, grainy picture, and the title that the post said is that if any of you know who this is or where this is from or whatever, you're old. And I looked at the picture and nobody else and I typed it. And I said, but what I said was the guy from Mutual of Omaha, the Wild Kingdom, whatever.
Marlon Perkins, yeah.
I looked at the picture and instantaneously I knew, because I grew up watching that. They were on repeat on Sundays, but just the same, because this was like from the 60s and whatnot. And so it confirmed the thing. Anyways, what I'm saying is that I've been around enough so that, like, in my years, early years, my dad took me down to Toys R Us, and they had a section of sciencey stuff, and he did purchase for me a telescope, with the lens and the mirror and the whole thing, and we did have exciting times with that, and they were fairly decent, like like, yes, it was Toys R Us, but they had some good, like they had RC cars as well that were pretty good, and so I remember having that experience as well, and yeah, it is an experience.
Yeah,
and I will say this: for me, whenever I have looked at it directly, there's a little bit of, tell me if this has ever happened to you, maybe not, but it's almost like ooh, this is like we're crossing into some, this is like, to look at it, I'm looking at it directly, there's something slightly, I don't want to say eerie, but yeah, there's a feeling of like crossing into this is like going over some sort of ravine. And is there that feeling when you look at it, or no? For me it is.
I don't know if it's that, but there is a sense of, holy cow, that's something completely off of the earth. That is nothing that I could ever touch. That is not a destination I could go to.
Yeah.
That is actually the moon. And we're so used to hearing it. We're so used to seeing it and seeing pictures of it. There's songs about it. There's stories about it. There's movies about it, for crying out loud. But actually taking a look at it through a telescope and being able to, if you wanted to, if you had the time and were ready to follow it, you could actually sit there and count the craters. And you could see the terrain. You can see the texture of the terrain. To me, that is something fascinating. I remember, well, that's the kind of thing that can get a person into astronomy. If they never thought about it before, the potential is there. My dad got a very nice telescope years ago, and I remember what did it for him. That was back in '86 when Halley's Comet was coming around. I had gotten out of the Army the first time. I was living in Nevada, and we went up to Virginia City on the side of the mountain where there's very little light pollution at all, out looking over this desolate desert with no lights at all. And the University of Nevada at Reno had brought down their telescope from the observatory there. And we're talking about huge thing. And we waited in line for a 30-second opportunity to look at Halley's Comet through that telescope. And that got my dad into that. I thought it was cool. I thought it was great. This was something that, I was 86, I was 25. So I thought I'm never going to see this again. So let's remember as much of it as we can. But it didn't spur me to get interested in astronomy. Well, it did my father. And I think something like the experience of these people who looked at the moon through that telescope, the potential is there to spur some of them on to get into science, get into astronomy, even on a hobbyist level. I think the potential's there. And I think that's cool.
I was watching some video that I don't even know the detail, but I remember a little piece of it that they were talking about exploration of space and traveling and humans one day and all these things. But I forget the details of what the video was about, but I do remember the impression that I thought, my thought inside of me. And I thought to myself, no, thank you. I like this world that we live in. It feels like it fits like a glove, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, you can survive on it, and that's a major benefit. So
it feels like it fits like a glove. Mm-hmm. And that whole other thing, it doesn't really, no, I feel like we belong here.
There's a lot to be said for you can breathe the air. The floor is no longer lava. And for the most part, we don't have beasts jumping out of the trees to, eat us alive and what have you. For the most part, it's a nice place. I tend to stay here a lot. So I'm with you,
Yeah, like it doesn't. I've never, in that respect, felt, yes, I think Star Trek and stuff like that is cool. But what I'm saying is, I've never felt the urge to leave.
Same here. Well, okay. There it is. If you had the opportunity, to go to the moon and back, you wouldn't take it.
No, not even interested.
Well, me either. But if I was given the opportunity to go orbit the Earth and then come back, I think that would be interesting. I think I would do that.
I like the ground. I like the world. No. Give me exactly this.
Give me Miami or give me death.
I'm attached to the world as it was for whatever one wants to think, the way it was created or the way it is.
Well, you have you've flown, right?
Don't like it either.
You don't like that? Okay. Well, I used to like it, but commercial air travel in this country has become it's like a death march with matching luggage. It is such a pain in the rear end anymore. I don't want nothing to do with it. And my attitude is I've flown enough. If I can't get there driving, I don't need to be there. So I'm with you on that score. The physical act of flying doesn't bother me. I've done it too many times.
I don't, to me, it's not, I'm kind of like the Phoenicians in that sense. You can boat, if you can boat there or walk there, it's all good. But if you have to sort of propel yourself with a winged type
Well,
thing. I'm
well,
not.
think about it. It's an unnatural act. It really is.
Yeah.
It's an unnatural act. But we have figured out how to do it, and I mean, more power to them. I mean, it's not for me anymore. But again, it's not the
No.
physical act of flying itself that bothers me. It's the process of getting on the plane, all the crap, the 2.5 hours of junk you got to go through before you actually sit down in the seat to get up into the air, and then all the crap you got to go through when you land, and then you got to do it again to get home. No thanks.
You know what's natural, or it feels very natural and earthy. I've not done it often, but I've done it. Is ride a horse. It feels like natural. I I took a little horse tour thing, um, and the guy says, "Okay, do you need help getting up?" I said, "No, I've watched enough westerns," and I put my foot on one, and I went around and got on. I've seen so many westerns.
Well, you're a majority of one.
Really?
Yeah, because most people have problems. I've only been on a horse a few times myself. Linda was practically raised on a horse, but she was on horses her entire life until she met up with this old stick in the mud. And we went out on horseback together once. She had she had a horse, I had a horse, and our daughter had a horse. They gave me the most gentle old plug that didn't want to be there. I didn't either. So we got along just fine. We took up the middle position. Linda led the way and we rode and everything. And then, but when it was time to turn around and head back to the stable, I didn't do nothing. The horse knew exactly where to go. He was headed home.
Well, that's what I was.
So, you know,
That's what I was going to tell you. So, like the old guy said, "You need any help?" I said, "No, I've watched enough. I think I can handle. I've watched enough westerns." But one foot, and I went, whoosh, and dude, it was like bonanza for me. I got on it, and have you ever seen that Eddie Murphy comedy thing where the Italians go to and watch Rocky, and when they leave the Rocky movie, they all want to fight because now they all think that they're Rocky and stuff.
Mhm.
Well, I kind of felt like when I got on that horse, I was like bonanza, baby, and I have a picture somewhere. I was fatter, but it was funny. I got, but here's the thing. So as he's working with all the other people, and I'm just sitting on the horse, I'm patting him and stuff. I said, you know what? Let's take this. Let's move a little forward. I went, huh! And the horse just like, and then finally the guy comes around. Like the horse would not move,
Mhm.
and the guy says, and he did some sort of signal, and all of them went.
Mhm.
And then my horse started going. So I'm like, I'm on a kiddie's ride.
Yeah.
Because it does what the owner says.
Mhm.
Doesn't matter what the heck I say.
Yeah. The horse knows you don't know what you're doing.
The horse is like, calm down, buddy.
And yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what my horse was like. I would do something with the reins, and he's like, "Calm down, drummer."
Yeah, yeah,
It's just relax.
yeah.
We're following him. I don't care what you say. I'm following him.
It's an amazing thing because it also, I guess, the more you would do that, the more you would, but you learn that I mean, it was an incredible experience. I would love to do. That's one thing that I'm totally down with. I love that earthbound stuff.
Yeah. Well, I'm with you. I'm with you. I mean, when I was younger, now okay, in the Army, I was a helicopter mechanic, so I flew as often as I could. If I had a chance to get in, it didn't matter front seat, back seat. If I could go with the aircraft, I was there. But it got to where the thrill just kind of wore off. And pretty soon it became a chore. Then it became work. And that's when it stopped being fun.
Yeah.
Now, then I viewed commercial travel as necessary to get me from one place to another. But the more often I did that, the less often I wanted to. We flew back from Hawaii to Los Angeles, and Linda's sister picked us up. That was on our anniversary, 1998, March 4th, 1998. And then I didn't fly again until 2017. I flew to Atlanta for a woodworking show and flew home. I haven't been on an airplane since. I don't care if I ever get on again. Because my attitude, I've told you my attitude. If I can't get there by driving, I don't need to be there.
No, Earth, dude, we're kind of meant for, you know,
Mhm.
as much as one wants to this or that. Oh, and by the way, and now after the fact, so with the horse thing,
Mhm.
it just it felt very natural. Like it felt
Mhm.
like, yeah, this is totally reasonable.
Mhm.
Um, there's a long tradition of man riding horses,
Mhm.
and it's just like saying man and dog.
Yeah.
It's just we instinctually, you know how you might
Some of us.
recoil. Well, well, at least the notion. Well, you know how you might recoil if you see a snake or something like
Mhm.
that. You see a dog in a general sense, unless there's some phobia going on. Um,
Yeah.
it's almost as if we've been around them and them around us for so long that they might as we count them as part
They're
of our
part of
own,
the family. Yeah. Exactly.
and they know it too,
Mhm.
instinctually.
Yeah. I've heard
It's
it said that the dog is the only animal that loves you more than it loves itself.
it's amazing.
Yeah, it is. I
It really
agree with you there. And I am a dog guy. We all have that friend who you get a party. There's one guy over in the corner petting the dog, playing with the dog. I'm that guy.
Yeah,
I like dogs more than I like most people.
they made a pact with us a long time ago,
Hmm.
and it's continued.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
So
you
how
know,
we got on that, I don't know.
well, animals,
But yeah,
horses.
it is the truth. Just one little quick one here that I had up my sleeve as well to kind of link to that video about the moon. We are right now in the middle of the Perseid meteor shower.
The
The Perseid meteor shower.
okay,
Have you? I take it from your response, you haven't been out to take a look at it or anything.
no,
I haven't either. I haven't either. It peaked on the 12th, but it's going to run until about the 28th of the
on
month.
the 12th of this month,
Yes. And when it peaked, they counted over 100 shooting stars per hour.
I saw one.
And we're going to be, uh, it's going to be slowing down until, let's see, the, oh, come on, until the 28th. Yeah, on the 24th. I'm sorry, from the 24th. And it'll be from about 11 o'clock at night until sunrise. You'll be able to see it.
I saw one while riding bicycle.
And every time we have two major meteor showers that happen, that we have the Perseid, which is now, and then we have the Leonid, which is in winter time
Is that every year?
every year.
Oh, okay.
And I have gone outside, oh gosh, I don't know how many times over the course of the years to watch these. And I have never, ever seen any more shooting stars than any other average night. Not once. I don't know if I'm looking in the wrong direction. I don't know what's going on now. Linda, I was dead asleep. Linda went outside a couple of days ago at like 1:30 in the morning or something like that. She's standing there watching them going, dang, oh yeah, man, wow.
Is
Okay.
it like this? Is it like, hey, Mark?
I don't I can't tell you because I was out. I don't know if she even tried to wake me up. But so if you're interested, we're in the middle of the Perseid meteor shower, visible in the northern hemisphere. Well, over North America anyway. I can't speak for Europe, but yeah, it's I think in some parts of Europe we get into that area, that dust particle storm. It would be during the daytime for them, so I don't know if they'll get to see it or not. So
All right.
It's what it is. It's dust particles from a comet that comes around, and the comet is let's see, the Swift Tuttle comet that passed close to Earth in 1992. And we passed through the densest and dustiest areas of its trail. And we go through it every year. And I
Very
have
cool.
yet to see it.
I've
Maybe
seen I've seen them before.
yeah, I've seen shooting stars before, but never any serious concentration like that of 100 an hour or anything like that. I'd like to, but I don't know. Maybe I'm just old and I can't stay up that late anymore.
Very cool.
So I am thoroughly shocked that Linda says she misses flying, and I'm thoroughly shocked she hasn't said a word about horses because that's her subject. She has forgotten more about horses than I ever learned.
A horse is a horse, of course, of course.
She worked at a stable, and I may be wrong here, Linda. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but you used to groom Mr. Red, didn't you? Or something. There's a connection between Linda and Mr. Red.
And Wilbur.
Wilbur. So that was all I had.
Okay, well, that I mean that was good enough. We got some good mileage out of a few topics there. I can tell you
Mhm.
that.
Yep.
Um, uh, 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 there's I guess to wrap up,
Mhm.
you know, um, there's you don't have Netflix, do you?
No, I don't.
There's a series
Hmm.
that I'm sure would appear somewhere else
Okay.
online called The Queen's Gambit,
Oh, yeah. You talking about the chess movie?
the chess movie.
Okay. Yeah. I've
Did you?
seen snippets of it. I've never seen the whole thing.
It's very good. It's like a 19 it's in the 1950s 60s,
Hmm.
and it's about a girl that's orphaned.
Hmm.
And I guess you've seen the little snippets, but it's very well done.
Hmm.
Like the whole thing is very well done. And she ends up in an orphanage, and the janitor in the basement has a chessboard, and she's cleaning chalk, the
Hmm.
erasers, and she starts asking questions, and he's like, "Go away," and this and that. But she's observing, and she starts learning on her own. And then he sees that she's curious and knows certain moves, and
Hmm.
so it tumbles, and she becomes a prodigy.
Hmm.
And the whole movie's about her, this disadvantaged situation, and her skills. And it's just the settings, the different settings, and the time period. Really cool movie. So that's just putting that out there as a viable recommendation.
Um, it's it's a it looks like it was very well done. It's an interesting concept to me. I just haven't pursued it because I forget about stuff like that until you and I talk about it. I think, yeah, I got to check that out, and then immediately squirrel. Something else takes precedence, and I just forget it.
Yeah, that's the thing about this world we live in now with technology. There's so
And
much good stuff that
and I think going back to us talking about information, I think that may be part of the problem and why some of these people think, so many people think that a lot of this doesn't matter is because there is so much and it's hard to keep up. I mean, there's no way you can keep up with the number of videos posted to any platform in a day, let alone 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 platforms. So you have to be picky. You have to select those things that you're interested in. And I think we're more willing to disregard the things that don't sound interesting because there's so many that do, you know?
yeah. Yeah,
And
and
which,
and and then there's whatever you're into to begin with. that you
Mhm.
focus on, you know, at a
Exactly.
given time.
Exactly. You know, if you're into geography, you're going to tend to gravitate towards those types of forms of entertainment and forget about music or the English language or poetry or sculpture or something like that. Whether you know you ever could be interested in that or not, if your interest is over here. And we tend to gravitate toward things that we're good at as well. You know, if you are, let me see, if you are good at music, you're probably going to gravitate towards it. If you're good at drawing, you're probably going to tend to gravitate towards that. You may absolutely love something, but absolutely suck at it. And that's when you become like me and be a pedestrian listener, because I don't have the aptitude for music. I know what I like and I listen to what I like, but I don't have the aptitude to play it myself. And I wish I did. That's not where my skills are. I'm good with my hands in other things. I'm more mechanically inclined or structurally inclined than I am musically inclined. So I think we tend to gravitate towards those things that we know we're good at.
Yeah, we're on our separate paths as individuals across the world, and there's variations there. But I'm sure if put in a precarious situation that you were forced to play Stairway to Heaven from beginning to end, or some calamity would fall on you, and they gave you a year to learn it, I'm sure you could muster the
I could probably fake it. I could probably learn to fake it if I sat down and really focused on it, but I don't have that aptitude really. It doesn't seem natural to me. And music is one of those things. I'm sure you've heard people attempt to play. I don't know if you've ever given lessons. Did you ever give lessons?
I have.
Okay.
I did that for work
Okay.
at one point.
Did I, did you ever have any students who could play the notes, but the feeling just wasn't there?
Yeah.
Because you can hit all the right chords, you can hit all the right strings, but if you're not feeling the music, there's a big component of it missing. There's no soul.
Yeah.
So,
That's the one thing about music that, so you said I could fake it. That's what you want. Music is all about, and I'm talking about rock and roll
mhm,
or anything closely related to pop music of the last 100 years. The key,
mhm.
many people will say the contrary, but I say confidently, I'll argue it with anybody for as long as it takes,
Mhm.
that faking it is the key element. And why? Because at the end of the day, it's that you just said, feeling it.
Mhm.
It's almost like branding a personality that you invoke while sitting or standing playing,
Mhm.
a vibe. You're pretending, you're posing,
Yeah.
you're taking on that's more important.
So the fake it till you make it is valid then.
I believe so, because
Okay.
if you
Interesting take. Yeah. Okay.
yeah, you know, like, I'm never going to be the Beatles,
Oh no.
but
No. Yeah. No.
in my mind I've been the Beatles in a song I've written,
Mhm.
has nothing to do with the Beatles, but the inspiration was what mattered, and it
Yeah.
got me to play along.
Mhm.
And that is the key. So it's that feeling thing
Right.
that
Right.
you were saying. It's
Right.
literally that.
But but I'm also sure that you had a student or two that you thought, man, you just don't have the aptitude. I know
No,
you're trying, but you really don't have the aptitude. This may not be for you. Maybe another instrument, but not this one.
no, no,
No, you
no,
didn't.
no,
Okay.
no, because it depends on what the person. Because not everybody's going to be John Lennon or
Oh, sure.
something.
Well,
Um,
I'll give you an example. I'm lost when it comes to a piano or a guitar. but I can sit down at the drum kit and I can keep time with you. And I might be able to throw a few fills in there too if I think that they're needed or necessary. So I'm worthless with a guitar. I'm worthless with a piano. But if you need a rhythm section, I got your back.
Because it's all psychology too. I mean, I know that there's hand coordination and whatnot, this and that. So, but putting that to the side, it's the vibe. You have to when you break open a door that reveals itself to you in music, the unreachable becomes reachable, attainable. And it's to do with our view. Yes, there's practice, but
yeah,
it's a feeling of it becomes part of you. And it's weird because see now how we're going into feeling as opposed to rigid.
yes, exactly. It's a different part of the brain, and I do know that. But uh, I I could get my MP3 player and put on my headphones, sit down at the kit, and play for an hour. And I did play for an hour and put it on shuffle so I didn't know what song was coming up next, and then just transfer over from Smooth by Santana to Gimme One Reason by Tracy Chapman to, I mean, just all over the damn place. And I had an absolute blast doing it. And every once in a while I wasn't looking for it and I wasn't watching for it, but every once in a while I could see Linda peek around the wall, look in there, just see, what is he doing? What is he doing? And I'm just having a blast, just doing my thing.
Yeah, that's the whole idea.
And enjoying it. I wasn't really good because I wasn't taking any lessons. I didn't know what I was doing, but I was figuring out the kit and I was learning the kit. And I was able to keep time. So much that I didn't need, pretty soon, I didn't need those headphones and didn't need the MP3. I could just sit down and start going and then try to come up with my own fills and this, that, and the other. So I get that. But I guess I have an aptitude for drums that I don't have with another kind of an instrument. Maybe I've never sat down and tried to focus on it the way I did the drums, but I did have fun with it. And that was all I wanted to do, was have fun with it.
Yeah, you have to internalize it and allow it and feel comfortable and explore it. I think, in a general sense, unless there's some terrible hindrance to the person, if need be, I think most people could learn how to play.
I think that, and I've said this before, and I'll continue to say it because I believe it to be true. I think everybody has an aptitude. I think everybody is born with an aptitude for something. We may never know it. We may never discover it, and we may never carry it to its what could be its success or its conclusion, because we have so much going on with normal regular life. But I believe that everybody has an aptitude. It may be in the sciences, it may be in art, it may be in whatever, something to do with your hands, mechanical or structural or whatever. But I believe everybody has an aptitude, and you never know it until you come across it. And
don't take that aptitude with me, son.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you see the play?
Yeah, I do. I got it.
It was bad, but
Steve said I'm really good at sleeping. Hey, I think Linda could do you some competition, because Linda has turned sleeping into an art form. I mean, it's like watching Ted Williams hit a baseball. It's true poetry in motion. 12 hours, 14 hours, nothing.
Well, that's a terrible aptitude to take on things.
Depends. I mean, everybody needs a hobby.
It will get to the point, though, that there's last thing I'll say, and I don't know why, but it just popped into my head. But there's on Facebook a chart. I don't know if you've ran into it, but I've run into it twice and stuff, and it shows all the sci-fi movies in chronological order according to our timeline,
Okay.
and it goes down the list. Da, 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 like Aliens, Terminator, The Matrix, and it just goes down the line. And at some point, far in the future, there's Idiocracy, the movie,
Uh-huh.
but it's like really far away, like 2,500 and something like that. But they do it in chronological order, and you can see patterns and say, "Oh yeah, this." You know what I'm talking about, patterns. But one guy in the comment wrote, and I remember this, and it says, "The one about Idiocracy is wrong. We're there already." He
Yeah.
said, "It was
Yeah.
funny as shit. It was funny."
I think a lot of people would agree with that. I think a lot of people would agree with that. Well, that's because we don't pay attention. We don't pay attention, or we don't think it's important. And, again, if you don't think something's important, nobody's going to force that into you. Some people don't give a damn about there, and there, or here and here. And some people think it's ridiculous, but it's all about communication. And if the person you're trying to talk to doesn't understand you, you might as well be speaking a different language.
And that's the thing.
Mhm.
If when you see people writing like that, there could be an error. I make errors,
Mhm.
but I am focused on writing because of the for the purpose that I use it. Um, so therefore, because I'm practicing it in terms of what I'm using it for, and it's repetitive in certain ways, I have certain things that I do that I'm aware of when writing in general that shifts over to a back and forth between people.
Right.
Um, but when you read something from someone that they make those mistakes, and if it's frequent, there could be various reasons. Like people could
Sure.
have a reading impediment, or
Dyslexia or something like that. Yeah.
there's a bunch of different reasons. But like, let's say um, that person writing said error may have more of a chance that they don't um, practice or indulge in reading and
Mhm.
as a thing, and so their carelessness with words, and again, I'm no, but I'll just say, is indicative of that. And like you just said, um, we might as well be speaking a different language. If you engage with a person like that
Mhm.
in some serious topic, you are looking for trouble, because if a simple word, mind you, somebody can make an error, this and that, but like if a simple word
Yeah.
repeatedly so is used incorrectly, or a string of certain words and stuff,
Mhm.
how likely is it that they're going to receive what you have to write in its proper context?
Uh, I'm not concerned with errors, because errors are simply that. We all misspell things. We all will select the wrong word on occasion. It happens. We're people, and people make mistakes, and that's all there is to it. But if you learn from that mistake, oh, damn it, I said this and I meant to say that, and you correct that error, that's one thing. And we can all move on with life. But to sit there and say, it doesn't matter, you know what I meant. No, I don't know what you meant. That's the point.
Mhm.
I don't know what you meant. You know what you meant. You just didn't communicate it to me. You know, that's why this is important. Well, I don't care. Well, then good luck with your life.
Or
The atti-
communicate.
the attitude with that, and I get it. Nobody wants to be corrected, and I try not to be rude. I'm not the guy that's going to sit there and correct everybody's grammar, pronunciation, or anything like that. I don't do that. I think that's incredibly rude. But if you're going to get defensive, if somebody does point it out and say, "Hey, dude, you said this when you should have said that," um, if you're going to get defensive about it and say it doesn't matter, then that's more of a problem than the fact that you made a mistake.
Yeah. Well, again, I think it's indicative
Hmm.
potentially of lack of, you know, uh, being concise with exchange of ideas. And here comes this idea of rigidity, or at least strictness, when it comes to conveying an idea.
Hmm.
Um, Many times I've written a reply to a comment, maybe on YouTube, maybe on Facebook, where I've thoughtfully written everything out. Sure, I've made mistakes plenty, but where I've thoughtfully written out in order to do away with unwanted consequences in
Hmm.
a discussion. I've conceded certain concepts
Hmm.
in my writing, only to have those concepts argued in a person's follow up thing
Hmm.
when I just
Yeah.
rid them of that issue. And what it results in is me realizing that even though we're speaking or writing the same language, as with speech, even though we're in the same language, it is not sufficient to overcome the mental, call them barriers or call them focus or call them
Hmm.
whatever you want, but from one brain and
Hmm.
the maze that is one person's brain to the maze that is someone else's brain, that exchange, that travel from one to the other, even though the same language is being used,
But
is still open for vast missteps.
well, there's a big misstep in the whole process, and that is the assumption that the other person is actually reading what you just typed out. Because, and case in point, your point that you have conceded something to them, and then they take that concept that you conceded, and they make that the focus of their next argument. It's like, dude, did you even read what I wrote?
Right.
You
Exactly.
know,
And
I
it
mean,
leads you to believe that if that's
that
the
they're not.
case,
Yeah, you're banging your head against the wall.
right. And so it becomes a situation
I know.
where even though you're speaking the English or writing the English, um, it's not available. The
Well,
communication bridge is not available. And here's the thing. If you are focused on a specific, and I'm being broad, but
yeah.
within that, if you're focused on a specific set of things
Mhm.
that you want to convey, ideas that you want to convey, one word followed by the other is actually not a throwaway at all. Each
No,
word, it's not just a filler.
words have meanings.
Right.
Exactly.
And so, but a lot of it, in especially in these short little
Hmm.
bits that
Sure.
happen on Facebook or whatever, you have to leave a lot on the cutting room floor
Sure.
because you can't. So
You can have a wall of text.
I mean, you might as well write a book, and
Yeah.
anytime somebody comments, you just link them to the PDF
Yeah, exactly.
in order to disqualify all the things that you're not trying to say.
Exactly.
And so, but that's the level of, and it's natural because we're human beings, and it's been going on probably forever. Because
Mhm.
at the end of the day, we may be thinking different things. Our
Mhm.
focus might be slightly angled to something else. We may not be reading the other thing, or if we do, we're too casual about what we're
Mhm.
reading and replying to. And maybe we haven't had food that day, so we're moody. There's so many variables in
Yeah,
why a conversation could miss the mark
but
that,
that's why I don't partake, because you said the magic word conversation. I don't see those as conversations. Conversation is two people exchanging ideas. It's a two-way thing. It's not two people lecturing one another. And that's what I see these as, is these internet rock fights are as people lecturing one another. And this is why I'm right and this is why you're wrong. That's not a conversation. That's a lecture.
well,
So
there's also
there isn't really any back and forth. There's no free flow of ideas like you and I are having right now.
Depending on the, I guess let's call it like etiquette,
Mm-hmm.
because that's also a part of it. So
Yeah.
the thing is, there's also something called etiquette,
Mm-hmm.
um, which is a big one. It's difficult for people to have the same etiquette all the
Mm-hmm.
time or at the right moment, and that also creates, because there's also a rules of engagement in terms of upping the
Mm-hmm.
concepts that you're putting. There's so much involved in the whole thing that but etiquette is a big one too.
Yeah.
um that's I'm telling you, it's, I think that this that we've discussed in the past is a big one in terms of much of the issues that occur between human beings,
Mm-hmm.
is this back and forth, and the problems that arise from it, even within the same language.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really anchored on that being a cause for a significant amount of problems in communication between people, be it for political, religious, cultural,
Even
just
just social, even just talking about, I mean, you could be talking about your favorite band. Somebody out there hates them.
yeah, well,
And
yeah,
my favorite band, somebody out there hates them. So, I mean, but you can disagree and still be civil with one another. I mean, I like Rush. My youngest daughter hates Rush. She cannot stand the sound of Geddy Lee's voice. And so I make it a point to play Rush music whenever she's around. But just because I found the weak spot and I got to exploit it. But or I'll tell stories about Geddy Lee or about Alex Lifeson or something like
yeah,
that. But it doesn't mean we're enemies.
yeah.
But
But
see,
you're
we're face to
you're poking,
face,
you're poking, you're poking, dude.
and she knows that. But she knows I do it because I love her. That is that's kind of our thing, you know. She knows sometime over the course of the night I'm going to talk about somebody or I'm going to talk about something that has to do with Rush. And she's going to go, "Okay, you're an hour in. I was counting on 35 minutes. All right. I knew you were going to talk about it. It was just when, you know." So it's one of those little things. But it's like you get two people who have ever been on YouTube together in the same room, they're going to talk about YouTube. That's going to eventually be the topic. Everybody else in the room is taking a bet on how fast it happens. You
Yeah,
know, so it's just one of those things. It's a given. But my point is that doesn't make us enemies. That doesn't make us anything less than two people who differ on one opinion. That
mm-hmm.
doesn't really matter. I'm not out to try to make her like Rush.
Yeah,
And I don't care if she likes Rush. I
yeah,
really don't. It doesn't change a thing that I do in my daily life. It really doesn't matter. It's just one of those little things that I know I can tease her about. But then again, I know she loves the Marx Brothers. So I can feed her Marx Brothers jokes and she'll throw them right back at me and we'll go through lines through the movies. You know, so I'm not a complete butthole, you know.
but
We
you
have
have
our
your
little
moments.
shtick we have our little shtick that we do, and then I needle her every once in a while. It's just part of being me. So
Well, all right, I think we made the round. We did good.
yeah,
Well,
yeah. We
um,
started with geez, what
something
did
or
we
other.
start with? We started with we started with the weather and we ended with the Marx Brothers. So that'll work.
Oh, I will say this: there's something also to be said about that I just said right now,
Mhm.
which is, oh, we did good.
Mhm.
Well, and I said, oh, we did well. There's also something about the variations in common street lingo,
Mhm.
um, that run parallel with, I guess, what you would call the more proper or traditional way of saying things.
Mhm.
And I think to have both, but to be aware of both and use them in is is better that well better is but to have both but be aware that what you're using is street as opposed to proper is a good thing, as opposed to using street for whatever that means, but you get what it means,
I
sort of
do.
like
Yeah,
in a
I do.
sense, but using street but literally not having the notion that what you're doing is street
Hmm.
is a big difference.
Right.
So you see,
Yeah, oh yeah, you
yeah,
have to be able to make that differentiation. I mean, you are, unless you are writing a work of fiction and you're portraying a character, you are very rarely ever going to type out the sentence, "Oh hell no," but you'll say it 15 times a day, or I will say it
yeah,
15 times a day.
right.
You know,
You know, you're using something that may not be
exactly.
appropriate at a cocktail party, or I'm sorry, some sort of tea and crumpets time,
But
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 you
that's
know,
exact. Yes, you do. You do know what is proper English and what isn't. But let me say that outside of the literary world, forget about written works, be they fiction or nonfiction. There has never been a golden age where everybody spoke proper English.
mhm,
It doesn't exist. There has never been a golden age when everybody used proper punctuation and everybody knew the correct verb, adverb, or whatever. There has never been a golden age of the English language when there was perfection. That is in our minds. That's fiction. The language is constantly changing, it's constantly evolving. At first, I resisted and I hated the internet shortcuts. How are you? R and then you. I
mhm.
hated that.
I hate it still. I
I've
hate
backed
it.
off. I've backed off on that because again, it's about communication. And when you've got two 15-year-olds who are used to texting, that's how they're going to communicate with one another. I'm fine with that. It's no different than the slang you and I used when we were with our buddies when we were 14 or 15.
Yeah,
We
well,
knew what we meant, even if our parents had no clue what we were talking about.
we did use a lot of little things. Dude
Oh,
was a
yeah.
big
Yeah. And I knew that that was taking over when I heard girls calling each other dude. Dude, what are
and
you doing? And I'm like, she's not a dude, number one.
and bro was also
Bro,
very
yeah.
typical here.
Mm-hmm.
People say, "Bro, come on, bro,"
Mm-hmm.
and so that was used a lot.
Don't
Dude and
tase me,
bro.
bro.
Yeah. Um. So fair enough. Those were things that we used, except we didn't have the internet like what we have now
Right,
to even bother with these shortcuts. But
right.
yeah, I guess you're right. But you know, it's still I look at the R instead of writing out R, and U as with the U instead of writing
But
out U. I
I
look at
have
it like, ugh.
But see, that's our generation. You and I are generation spells everything properly and uses punctuation in text messages.
Well, I
That's what
mean,
generation I'm in.
yeah,
Because that's what it was evolving. We got in on the ground floor and it was evolving. But these kids learned their own shorthand and learned their own slang, with the fastest thumbs in the West. And where we would sit there and compose a text message for 5 minutes so we knew how to spell everything correct, they came up with a shorthand. But then they taught it to their grandparents, my parents. So I'm stuck in the middle. My parents would use that shorthand because they were texting my grandkids and they would use that shorthand with each other. And I'm stuck in the middle here. So eventually our generation will die out and everybody will be using that shorthand. So
yeah.
what could I say?
Who knows what we will look like Phoenician writing by
Yeah,
at one point.
yeah. Jerry Polly once crafter says, I think the origin of short text came out from the T9 days. You may very well be right. And coders and programmers had their own language and had their own shorthand. And so, I can't get mad at any of that. It's all about communication.
Is it something like
Um,
this? Hey, doc. Yeah, this is the hospital calling. Does this mean chop off one leg or one arm?
yeah,
The patient
exactly.
is eagerly waiting.
Yeah. Well,
You know how they
but
scribble.
dude, I remember 30 years ago, there was discussion about uh, literally drawing lines on patients on what area to operate on because somebody would make a mistake. A guy was supposed to have an appendectomy and they're doing open heart surgery on him. And it's like, no, you got the wrong dude. This is open heart surgery. This is an appendectomy. But there was some discussion. I remember, do you remember Paul Harvey on the radio?
Yeah.
I remember Paul Harvey talking about doctors now recommending that we do, dotted line, cut here, that kind of thing. This is an
Uh,
appendectomy.
yeah, doc, I'm calling because yeah, I thought it was a cuticle that had to be removed, but he now has a third leg attached to
Yeah,
him.
really. Or just one leg. We had to take the other one off. We're talking about toenail surgery where it's not like trimming your mustache. Oops, it's uneven. I got to cut it shorter. Oops. Oh, get him a wheelchair. He'd be fine. That kind of thing. And you've done this twice now. There's going to be a time where people don't know what the heck that is.
Hang 10.
Yeah, it'll be hang loose. Yeah, exactly. What is he doing with this up here? That was the old telephone sign, dude. Oh, okay. Because now it's like this. It used to be you could mouth call me. Now it's text me.
That's crazy, dude. Yeah, because this
Mm-hmm.
is really not something that anymore. I mean, it's still understandable, but at the same time, it's like a little bit passe.
Or we do this to look at our watch. How many people wear a watch?
Excuse me, what time is
Some
it?
people do. Yeah. Oh, it's 2 hairs past a freckle. Oh, okay. I don't know, but that's all right. It's me being old.
Um,
It's me being old.
so are we gonna talk later? My day's been like this, man.
Yeah, really. Exactly.
People will have no idea. Anyways, let's land this plane.
All righty. We need to do that.
Folks, thank you for hanging out with us. This is the Trampled Underfoot podcast show with your hosts, Mark Lindsay and Eloy Escajedo. And we go live every Tuesday at 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific Coast time here on YouTube, Trampled Underfoot Podcast on YouTube. And we also have a website, trampledunderfootpodcast.com. You can catch our past episodes by pressing the Wayback Machine button over there. You can download them to your podcatcher or anywhere you like to listen to your podcasts and take them on the go. And we also have a page over on Facebook, Trampled Underfoot Podcast on Facebook. And we usually post a few of the links that we talk about, maybe pictures, images, and so on. So be sure to check that out. And we're also sponsored by
Harneal Media, your web solution. Look, you and me talking here. Let me get up here close to the microphone. This is an intimate setting, and we need to keep it intimate because it's just you and me. Ain't nobody else listening. Look, you're thinking about a website. You know you are. You may not know it yet, but you're thinking about a website. You want to set up a web store. You have products or services you want to sell. Maybe you're considering designing some merch. Harneal Media is the only web source I will ever endorse or recommend. It's Steve Nealon. You know him. We all know him. He's a friend. He's practically family. He is the face and the name behind Harneal Media. Steve will take care of what you need. He'll do as much or as little as you'd like. He's very competitively priced. And as I've said many times, and will continue to say, when you deal with Harneal Media, you deal with Steve. It's 100% personalized service, not some nameless, faceless person in a call center that you're never going to talk to again. You always deal with Steve. And I suggest that you do so at harnealmedia.com. That's HARNEAL media.com. Sponsor of TrampledUnderfootPodcast.com.
and the Spanish version. Thank you very much.
I'm glad you did that.
All right, guys. Well, look, enjoy the rest of your week. Be safe, but do the things that you like. We thank you for hanging out with us. Till next time, see ya.
Peace. Peace.
Awkward wave.
Awkward wave. Oh, you got the princess wave.